Want to use a PGR in your cereals but have no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as one tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Talk to your retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. I am your host, Lindsay Smith, and joining me now is Robin Anderson. She's with the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association, otherwise known as CASA. Welcome here, Robin.
Thank you for having me, Lindsay.
So this is an exciting week. This week marks the inaugural, and I want to get this right, Kids FarmSafe Week, offered by CASA. Robin, what is Kids FarmSafe Week all about?
Well, we're so excited that it's the first annual Kids FarmSafe Week. Farm families are made up of course, the farmers and the farm workers, and of course, children. So keeping that future of agriculture safe is really important, to everybody and to CASA and to our farm families, farming communities. We've seen some statistics that have come out that have been a little bit disheartening. The Canadian Agriculture Injury Reporting data came out in 2020, and we saw that children ages 0 to 4, the rates of them being killed in agriculture-related incidences is higher than any other age group under the age of 60. And that's really distressing. And in order to address that, we really wanted to, highlight, how important it is to keep that future of agriculture safe, thriving, and happy. And of course, those are the young people on our farms that live there, that might come to visit, that sometimes that's where they play, that's where they grow up. And that's what Kids Farm Safe Week is really all about.
It's such a key point that you bring up that, as farm families, we may have taken, let's say, precautions with our own kids. We may, have made it clear what the rules are, have designated play spaces, etc. But often we have friends that come to visit, or we have, a birthday party, or we have, people that come in that maybe aren't so familiar with the farm. So is there within this week sort of that capacity to talk about, any kids that end up joining you on the farm?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Having that conversation, if it's visitors or maybe you have a hired worker that has children that might bring them along, cousins that come in from town or the city to come to visit, all kids are kids, right? Doesn't matter. Right. So it's important to have those conversations with any kids that are on your farm. And we do see that, under the age of 4, the reason why most kids are killed is that they're ran over. Right. And then over that, it's rollovers. And that usually means that there were extra riders on a piece of equipment, or maybe riding in a place they shouldn't be, like, on a skid steer, bucket of a tractor, those sorts of places. So, that conversation, I grew up on a farm. I love that I have that, farm kid background, and, my family still farms, and still have nieces and nephews on the farm. Right. And, that's a conversation that we continually have to have is, they are amazing. They're growing up in these beautiful farms and these, wonderful places. But we want them to grow up, yeah. and we want them to succeed and thrive. And so that means protecting them the best way we can. And that means not putting them in shrink wrap and bubble wrapping them. That doesn't mean that. It means, mitigating risks, having conversations, and really taking that evaluation of being, of whether it's a visitor to your farm or your own farm kid, being like, what are safe things that we could do together? How can I show the love of agriculture in a safe way? How do I get them to respect, things, the hazards on our farm? Can we identify these hazards together? So yeah, it's a week for all kids that might visit or live on a farm.
Mm-hmm. So I think it is really key there, and you've highlighted, not just the age group that is perhaps most at risk, but in what way? Because unfortunately, where we lose kids are in things where, they really are in a position they shouldn't have been, and had there been a rule about it, maybe wouldn't have been. And so, that culture of making safe spaces on your farm and following through on the rules, how important is it that as, the adults on the farm, we show that culture of safety, from the get-go?
That's a great. I love that you use that word culture of safety, and that's so integral, and that's what CAS has really always been about. Is the culture shift, the change. I remember when I was kid growing up. Oh gosh, I'm going to date myself, but the '90s. And the even it was always kind of a bit of a pride, being like, oh yeah, I lost a finger and blah blah blah, right? Like this conversation about how tough I am and how long I work and how exhausted I am and how I care so much about the farm. I'm willing to put my own person, my own health, my own safety at risk.
Mhm.
And that is just such a strange way to think about you know agriculture, and such a strange way to think about the family farm. When I think about family farms that are thriving, successful, they're farms that look after themselves. They look after their people first, right? And that means that the farmers on that farm, mom, dad, uncle, auntie, grandpa, grandma, whomever are out there farming, they're looking after themselves. They're getting adequate sleep, adequate nutrition. They're checking in with each other, in terms of mental health. They're addressing hazards as they come up. They're not taking shortcuts, and they're having those real, sometimes hard conversations. You don't always want to say, to each other, hey, I noticed what you've done, isn't really that safe,
Mhm.
and I'm worried about you. That's a kind of a hard conversation to have. And I'm as I get older, I'm less afraid to say those things. And sometimes it can be met with maybe some derision or some dismissal. But having those conversations over and over again, it's about caring and sharing and loving each other. And it's about growing that farm. You know, these are older statistics, but we've seen that a family farm can't usually survive the death of the primary farmer. It just goes under. The neighbors, of course, will rally and things will happen that first season, but after that, there's that decision, and Century Farms gone in the blink of an eye because of a shortcut or a mistake or not enough sleep or those sorts of things. So showing that you care about yourself and care about your farm in that way is such a really great, relatable way for kids to see that. And when kids are really great. They're so aware, they're so observant. And so when they say something to you too, that's a great time to take a bit of a moment of reflection and be like, oh yeah, you're right. That's something maybe we should talk about, or maybe we
Mhm.
could think about addressing, and how can we address that together as a family.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's openness and conversations and honesty is and I think that just builds that culture of safety.
Mhm. And I appreciate that, and this is something that CASA, I think, does very well, is recognizing the realities of farms, farmers want to include their children. They want to teach them the skills, but there are age appropriate tasks and there are age appropriate, places that kids should be. And I farm as well. I've had my young kids on the farm, and there are times when they simply can't be where we are because there is no safe space for them. And and you're right. I struggle with this too, of this sort of this badge of honor of, having narrowly escaped death in a PTO accident or something like that. We're all glad you're here, but it shouldn't be a badge of honor. Like, I really struggle with that one, that there's somehow these taking these shortcuts because I put in the long day, or I got it done anyway, and push the safety limit. I don't know that that's really the badge of honor we should be wearing on one end. That is not Robin speaking. That's Lindsay speaking. So there you go, everybody. Okay, but I do, before we run out of time, because I think we could probably talk about this all day. Before I run out of time, I do want to highlight, of course, the Kids FarmSafe Week. Your presenting sponsor is BASF. What will happen over the course of this week? So it's May 13th to 19th. There is a website where people can go for resources. What might people expect over this next week to celebrate this?
Well, watch out on social media. That's huge for us. We're a really small little team up here, so we're really depending on all of our amazing partners, and of course our presenting sponsor BASF is just been such a rock star in terms of getting out there, getting that message across, and of course their Safety Scouts program. So if folks would like to know more about that, it's really an amazing program. It's something that really just starts that conversation off. So if you go to the website kidsfarmsafe.ca. And under there, you can see resources, and you'll see BASF Safety Scouts, and you can order a kit for your farm kids. It's a little vest, there's coloring sheets, and there's all these pledge. And that pledge is for the kids, but it's also for mom and dad to be like, oh yeah, this is actually really important. And there's also other really good resources. Lindsay, you were saying about tasks that are age appropriate. The Ag Youth Work Guidelines are an amazing resource, and those actually will walk caregivers, parents, whomever, over through tasks that kids are safely able to perform at their age. And not all kids age the same way, right?
That's right.
We always joke that my brother was born an 80-year-old man, right? He was, maybe not physically able to, but he was very emotionally ready to do a lot of things. But having that addresses all of those questions, right? Emotional, wet readiness, physical readiness, those sorts of things. We also have a webinar coming up on the 15th, and that's presented by BASF. And it's a conversation with two farmers, two farm moms, and a conversation about what that looks like, modern day, moms on the farm, raising kids, all those stressors that are related to, raising those kids safely on the farm. And the two dynamic, amazing farm women, Bailey Kemry from Saskatchewan and Katie Keddy from Nova Scotia. So we would love for folks to join us. It's free. Just have to register, and you can find that on the website as well.
Perfect. Wonderful. And love to see familiar names on this. And it's definitely a challenge. We're not downplaying, the fact that this could mean a bit of work, maybe a bit of a culture shift at the farm, that this is important, but there are resources there to do it. And Rob and I, for one, am really pleased that CASA is celebrating this week and bringing attention, of course, to keeping our kids safe here on the farm. So Robin with CASA, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Lindsay.